Guys, once again, if you can, please smash the like button on this video. Let's try and get 1,000 likes within the next 24 hours. Appreciate it. As I said, we're back in the algorithm, so come on, let's keep pushing, guys. So this next story, bit of a crazy one. It's about revenge. And it all happened on a quiet afternoon on July the 8th, 2024. There was an eruption of violence that shattered Walsall. What unfolded in broad daylight was not a random act of violence, but it was a meticulously planned execution, cold, calculated and devastating. 20-year-old Connor Brookes, a young man with no gang affiliations, became the latest victim of a brutal tit-for-tat war playing out between rival groups. Gunned down in a terrifying drive-by shooting as he sat in a van, his life was ended in seconds. His mate Bradley, seated beside him, survived by sheer chance, but the psychological and physical scars remained forever. Behind the wheel of the black Ford Focus that pulled up alongside them were three young men, Jake Sambrook, Byron Selleck and Julian Falconer, intent on revenge. Together, they carried out a deadly mission of retribution for the earlier murder of Bailey Atkinson, a young man with ties to the defendants and whose death had already sent ripples through Walsall's criminal underworld. The chilling moment began as a black Ford Focus, which was later confirmed to be stolen and bearing false number plates, crept slowly along Well Lane, rolling quietly past shops and homes. Unbeknown to the public going about their daily errands, the vehicle had some guys inside and they had a gun. The guys were Connor. Connor and Bradley, they were chatting in their own car, unaware of the danger pulling alongside them. The Ford Focus stopped briefly. In the space of just 6 seconds, a black window lowered and a sawn-off double-barreled shotgun was raised. The gunman, face hidden by a balaclava, pulled the trigger at point-blank range. The shotgun blast sent a heavy metal slug clashing through the window and into Connor's head. The force of the impact slumped him violently against the driver's side door, motionless. Bradley, reacting to the deafening bang, ducked instinctively but not quick enough to escape the blast entirely. He was hit in the shoulder, bleeding heavily but alive. Eyewitnesses and nearby CCTV footage captured the chaos that followed. The Ford sped off as terrified bystanders ran for cover. Within minutes, emergency services descended on the scene. Paramedics worked frantically to save Connor, hauling him from the wreckage and beginning life-saving procedures in the middle of the road. Despite their efforts, there was little they could do. The slug from the shotgun had passed through Connor's brain. He was pronounced dead at the scene, a young life snatched away. So Connor Brookes, he had no history of violence. He was a scrap metal collector who worked hard and stayed out of trouble. But in a twisted logic of street retaliation, his name became a target simply because of his family. So I'll go through this story sort of later on towards the end, but just 6 weeks earlier, his older brother Patrick Brookes had been jailed for life for his role in the murder of Bailey Atkinson in 2023. Bailey's death had been gruesome. He was hunted down and butchered in the streets of Walsall by a group of masked men wielding blades, including a fearsome 24cm Rambo knife. The savage ambush left Bailey with more than 30 wounds after a grieving community demanded justice. Patrick Brookes was one of 7 convicted in that case. Connor, however, he wasn't part of the world, yet vengeance, it don't discriminate. Sambrook, Selleck and Falconer, friends of Bailey Atkinson, sought their own justice not through legal means, but with bloodshed and violence. Armed and coordinated, they decided to strike. Investigators believed the killing was planned in advance as part of a wider effort to terrorise those associated with Bailey's killers. So the 3 men stood trial at Wolverhampton Crown Court, denying charges of murder, attempted murder and possession of a firearm with intent to endanger life. The prosecution, led by Michael Burrows KC, painted a vivid picture of joint enterprise, the theory that although one person may have pulled the trigger, all 3 shared the murderous intent. The jury agreed. On April the 16th, they found Sambrook, Selleck and Falconer guilty of all charges, and yesterday the court handed down life sentences to each of the men. They must each serve a minimum of 29 years behind bars before they can be considered for release, meaning they will likely spend the majority of their lives behind bars. There was a 4th man, Samuel Danks Petty. He played a different but significant role. He was not present at the shooting. He was at a driving lesson at the time, but he aided the killers in its aftermath. He picked them up, transported them away from the scene, He helped dump the Ford Focus used in the murder. For his actions, he was convicted of perverting the course of justice and sentenced to 3 years in Young Gun Offender Institution. Falconer was also found with the kitchen knife when arrested weeks later, compounding his charges. So the court heard that the killing was not an isolated act. Less than 10 minutes before Connor's murder, the same stolen Ford Focus was involved in another shooting, this time on Stevenson's Avenue, about a mile and a half away from Well Lane. CCTV captured the car speeding along the road, being followed closely by a Nissan Qashqai. Witnesses reported hearing 2 loud bangs. Miraculously, no one was injured in that incident, but the attack set stage for what was to come shortly after. After the second shooting, the killers made their way to Well Lane. Connor had just gone into a shop and returned to the van parked outside. He didn't have time to see what was coming. CCTV and forensic evidence placed all 3 men in the car, and inside the abandoned vehicle recovered 4 days later, police found shotgun residue and DNA linking the suspects to the murder. So Connor's death had left a gaping hole in his family. They described him as incredibly kind, caring and full of life. He had no involvement in the crimes that led to his brother's imprisonment. He simply found himself in the path of a ruthless vendetta. Loved ones maintained he was not in a gang nor involved in any criminal activity, just a young man tragically caught in the crossfire of a war that was not his. His friend, now living with both physical and emotional scars that day, has become another silent victim. His cousin, Benjamin, had also been convicted in Bailey's murder, adding yet to another layer of tragedy to a story already drowning in loss. Judge Michael Chambers' case, he summed it up powerfully. He said this was a deliberate and targeted execution carried out in a public place. It placed not just the intended victims, but members of the public at risk. It was cowardly, brutal, and entirely unjustified. So with regards to Bailey Atkinson, 7 men carried out the brutal and fatal attack on the 21-year-old, and they were sentenced to a combined total of 138 years in prison. So as I said, the victim, Bailey Atkinson, was stabbed more than 30 times with a Rambo-style knife in a shocking display of violence that left even emergency services, their responders, shaken. Mr. Atkinson, he was originally from Coventry, had moved to Walsall 2 years prior in an effort to distance himself from a gang-affiliated lifestyle. Tragically, he would fall victim to the very violence he had sought to escape. The fatal attack took place during the early hours of January the 28th, 2023 on the High Street in Walsall Town Centre. Mr. Atkinson had been out with a friend when he was ambushed by a gang of teenagers who arrived in 2 stolen vehicles, a Toyota and a Seat Leon. The group, armed and determined, gave chase before surrounding Mr. Atkinson and launching into a frenzied assault. Witnesses, including staff from a nearby Asda supermarket, watched in horror as the group launched their deadly attack. Despite the efforts of bystanders and paramedics, who were forced to perform open-heart surgery on the pavements in a desperate bid to save his life, Mr. Atkinson died from his catastrophic injuries. He was taken to Queen Elizabeth Hospital in Birmingham, where he was pronounced dead at around 3 o'clock in the morning. A post-mortem examination revealed Mr. Atkinson had suffered 32 stab wounds and 65 distinct injuries, including bruising and slash marks, indicative of a prolonged and violent assault. His final words to the paramedics were reported to be, "I can't breathe. Please tell my mum I love her," before he lost consciousness and could not be revived. Following the attack, the assailants fled the scene and returned to the stolen cars. Which they later dumped on grassland near Slater Street and Gough Street. In an apparent attempt to destroy evidence, both vehicles were set on fire. The Rambo knife used in the killing was found beneath Mr. Atkinson's body at the scene. All 7 defendants, teenagers at the time of the incident, were found guilty of murder after a trial. And back in May 2024, they were all sentenced as follows. Patrick Brookes, so the brother of the man that got killed from the original story, he got life with a minimum term of 20 years. Ronan McCulloch, who's 19, got life with 20 years. Sonny Loveridge, who's 20, was given life with a minimum of 23 years. Benjamin Wilkes was sentenced to life with a minimum of 18 years. A 17-year-old got 19 years. Another 17-year-old got 19 years. And a third 17-year-old also got 19 years in jail. So basically they got more years in prison than life that they've actually lived. Westminster confirmed that all 7 had played a role in what they described as a premeditated and coordinated attack orchestrated with deadly intent. Detectives believe the group targeted Mr. Atkinson as part of an ongoing dispute, although the exact motives remained unclear. Spokesperson for the police said Bailey Atkinson was a young man trying to turn his life around. His murder was an act of unthinkable violence carried out by a group of individuals who showed a complete disregard for human life. So guys, because of that murder, Bailey Atkinson's boys, they got together and they decided to take revenge for their friend. So, as I said, the story of Connor Brookes, it's more than just a headline. It's a tragic tale about the deadly consequences of gang violence, revenge, and the indiscriminate ripple effect it can have on innocent lives. As we saw, his murder played out in broad daylight on a residential street, and it's a brutal reminder that in wars of retaliation, there are never any people that win. There's only victims. So Connor's name now joins the name of Bailey Atkinson, a growing list of young people lost to senseless violence. And while the convictions may bring a measure of justice, they cannot bring any of these guys back.